Welcome to Avant-Garde Entrepreneur. I am so glad that you're here today with me, my friend. I have a very special announcement that I'd like to start off with. Today, as I record this episode, we are launching my book that I co-authored with Jack Canfield, the international best-selling author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series and the Success Principles. We collaborated with some other authors from around the world, other experts from around the world, and we are launching our book called Mindset Matters. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm holding it up now. Really excited. I can see it on Amazon.com. So if you happen to be able to access that, you can just go to Amazon.com and type in Mindset Matters in the search. And I didn't even have to type in Jack Canfield. It popped up as the first one. But if you want to, you can try Mindset Matters, Jack Canfield, and it should pop right up. And it's a green cover, and it's got like a little image of a brain on it. It's not a gross brain; it's like a classy brain with like little people, little people working on top, as if they're working on top of a skyscraper. So check that out. Whenever you're listening to this, it doesn't matter. This is August 8th, 2024. But whenever you're listening to this episode, you know I do the content and the things that I share are designed to be effective all year round. So whenever you're listening to this, I encourage you to go online and check it out. And if you buy the book right now, it's only in hardcover. But if you buy it and you send me an email, I will either, if I see you in person, I'll bring it to you. Especially if you're outside of the United States. But if you're in the US, I will mail a copy to you with my photo on the front of it, and I will sign it for you. So my email, as you all know, is Trisha at trishabaileyphd.com. And I'll link to the book and my email in the show notes. So just send me your address that you bought it, and I will send you one with me on the cover and signed. So now on to the show. As you know, I am a super fan of building a sustainable social enterprise, and it's pretty much what I talk about, I would say, all the time. This episode, and what I share, what I talk a lot about, is that building a sustainable social enterprise really begins on the inside of you as the leader. And this episode is a follow-up to episode 56, where I talked about fear and fatigue being the two quiet killers of leadership. This is why I refer to fear and fatigue as the two quiet killers of leadership. So yes, they figuratively they kill you as a leader because they really just drag you down and really lower your vibe. But they can literally kill your leadership because even though you're still present, you're still here on this earth as a person, you become drastically less effective because you're either a shell of the person that you really are because you're believing these lies and living in this exhaustion, or because you shut down or run away from your social enterprise. And I've seen this happen. So it's an incredibly important topic for us because it's so common for leaders to feel isolated and alone. And a lot of the point of this podcast is for you to have a place where you can listen and feel like the challenges and the things you're dealing with, we want to normalize them so that you don't feel like you're not alone, so that you feel like you're among friends and that there's nothing wrong with you and that whatever you're dealing with, there is a solution. And if you are here as a social entrepreneur, it's because you're called by your higher power. And I want to do everything in my power to work with my high power to keep you here. The message that I shared in 56, it is not about avoiding fear and fatigue, because I would be the biggest hypocrite ever if I suggested that, because I have certainly, lived in the extremes. And I still have fear and fatigue. Instead, it is about recognizing their existence and the effects of it. And when your pendulum is kind of beginning to swing a little too far, and knowing when to back off. So in that episode, I gave some tips for overcoming fear and fatigue. So the first is recognizing their existence. The second was, I still haven't come up with a catchy way to say this, but anything that you repeat over and over again is going to get easier. Anytime you're stepping out of your comfort zone and doing something that causes you fear, the more you do it, the easier it gets. But it's important when you are stepping out and doing something new and repeating it over and over again, that you do it in isolation so that you focus on one new thing at a time. Because if we focus on doing too many things that are out of our zone of comfort or zone of familiarity, then that's when the fear can just become too consuming. So we really want to just do, when we're doing something new, we want to just focus on doing one new thing at a time to kind of keep things leveled out. And third, tune into the signs. If you pay attention, your spirit is likely giving you signs and signals that you are overexposed to fear and fatigue. And this episode could actually be one of them if you're listening right now. The fourth tip was to slow down. And the fifth tip was to press pause altogether. Now, I've gotten a lot of great feedback from that episode. And one of the things that is very consistent that people shared is, I'd really, really like to slow down, but I just don't know how. And also, I'd really like to press pause, but that just seems impossible. And if that is you and you hear these things and that makes you feel that way, this episode is for you. So I did an experiment. Not only did I slow down, I pressed the pause button. Now, it started as a slow down. And then I pause it altogether. So this might even be something, this might even be one of the lessons that I really hadn't even thought about, that maybe you think about slowing down, but then you realize that you just pause altogether. I was going to use the term sabbatical because it seems so formal, but it is kind of socially accepted and it's used in the academic world. And that was how it seemed. But the reality was that it is very different. So, sabbatical. What is a sabbatical? Before starting my sabbatical, I did what anyone, I think, would do. I Googled, what is a sabbatical? And there were gobs of links about it. So, sabbatical stems from the word Sabbath. I'm going to give you a quick breakdown. It is a break of some sort. The time varies from one day to a week to an entire year. What you do and don't do on a sabbatical varies. Some people use prayer, fasting, zoning out, traveling, writing. Essentially, the rules are there are no rules. And the one caution that I read that was consistent across the board is that there is a risk of never going back to work. And of course, my response was, well, this does not apply to me. I would never not work. I mean, who really retires anyway? My guess is you probably feel the same way. Like, yeah, first of all, taking a break seems a little far out there. But if I did, I would never not go back to work. I'd never not go back to my social enterprise. So my definition of sabbatical has become breaking your routine and patterns so you can uncover new possibilities and potentials that bring you more joy in your life. So again, this is my personal definition of sabbatical. Breaking your routine and patterns so you can uncover new possibilities and potentials that bring more joy into your life. When I was thinking of the concept of sabbatical, so kind of to give a little bit of the backstory, as you know, I did a merger with my company last year. It was in the fall, or we started the process in the fall, finished in the spring, finished in May, and then it was really another full year of being mostly, quite actively involved. And so I had planned to take some time off, but I really didn't know what that would look like. And also, I was really on, I was in my routine and I had the roller coaster and living on adrenaline. So even though I had tried to back off, I really didn't. And it got to the point where this May, it seemed like things were really just kind of slowing down. Like, wow, this is slowing down for real this time. And I had been pushing, as I talked about in 56, episode 56, I had really been pushing myself out of my zone of familiarity. I had been feeling a ton of fatigue and a ton of, I'd just been feeling fear for the past 20 or 30 years so much because I was just constantly in this mode of pushing past my zone of what was comfortable. And I really started to feel myself get to the point where, you know what, I really need to, this is really taking a toll on my health. And so I was very intentional about slowing down. And the more I started contemplating slowing down, the more I realized that maybe I would pause altogether. So, leading up to May, I had several events that were back to back to back. I had several speaking engagements. My last speaking engagement was to I think 200, there were 1,200 people, I think, attending. Maybe 200 or so, 200 or 300 or so were in the session. And it was online. So that was kind of like my last push to the finish. It's like, once I get through this one, then I'm really going to take a break. And John and I had a trip coming up, so that helped a lot. And then also John was going to have shoulder surgery. I had no idea how much that was going to help my sabbatical because I was at the point where I I really kind of didn't have a choice but to slow down, or in some cases pause. So what I had done was I thought, okay, I'm going to give myself a month. And then I thought, no, I really leaned into this with my spirit. I think it was like May 5th or 6th was my last thing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to give a month. So the 2 months, actually, I said 2 months. 2 months would be Monday, July 8th, I think it was. That's the day that I'll plan to go back. And it basically just needed to take 2 months out of the spotlight. No Zooms, no meetings, no recordings, no nothing. And I felt in my spirit that I needed to take a month to just not do anything other than the minimum to keep going. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll do that. And then I'll take a month and kind of do some behind the scenes stuff. So I really didn't know exactly how it was all going to shake out. But what I did know was that I was going to need to take some time. And if I didn't take some time, there were going to be some negative implications for my health. And it wasn't sustainable the way that I was living. So some of the things that occurred during the break, I'll just share some in general. So first of all, there were physical changes. I literally had to take different routes to get different places. And it's funny because I called my nephew. He had just finished his semester at college and it was like his first week back at home. And I talked to him about this. I'm like, I know it sounds silly, but I'm literally driving different directions or walking different paths. We find that we get in the habit of doing the same thing the same way. And I thought, well, what's one little thing that I can do to start living life differently? Well, I'll drive to the store a different way, or I'll walk to the coffee shop a different way. I'll take a different path. So I was literally just taking different routes. And it sounds silly and small, but I found that I was in this pattern, and I think all of us can agree, we get in this pattern of doing the same thing the same way, get out of bed the same way, have the same routine, go to the office the same way, and if I wanted to break that routine, I was going to have to physically drive different ways, walk different ways. And those were small symbols of, the small roots of starting to think in different ways. The next physical change was I did one new or different thing each day for, I think it was about 3 weeks. So there were, whether it was going to a coffee shop at a different time, getting out on my surfboard, which I hadn't done in a while, swimming in a pool, like It was going to a different class at the gym. Silly little things, but they were things that it was just something to break the pattern and to break the habit of how I had been living. And then the next physical thing would say was taking care of John and taking care of things around our home. So my husband takes care of, he works from home, so he is able to do laundry, tidy up. He's able to do a lot of stuff. When he had his surgery, which happened in early June, that basically became, because he's only one of his arms was working. I started doing all those things, and that was really actually very good for me to be able to. I think I had felt some lack, maybe. I don't know. Don't know if I felt lack as a wife, but I felt like those are being able to do things around my home. Basically, it just felt really good to be able to keep up with doing the laundry, doing the dishes, um, making the beds, tidying up, taking care of things outside, things like that. It just felt really good to be able to take care of our home. Those were some of the physical changes that took place. I took different routes. I did one new thing every day, and I took care of things around our home instead of being on my computer. The next were emotional changes. I'm not going to lie, guys. I actually had to evaluate whether or not to continue. And I made an intentional choice to continue versus habitually going down the same path. This is something that I don't think I felt very comfortable talking about when I was in it because, kind of whenever I was right in it. But I really gave a lot of thought to, okay, so I've been, I finished one thing, finished another thing, started Trisha Bailey PhD LLC, started a nonprofit, which I haven't really talked about yet, got everything approved. We got 501c status, which is the official nonprofit status in the United States. And then I thought, gosh, am I even supposed to continue this? Can I continue this? And so it was really important for me to go through that process of contemplating. There were 2 weeks there where I thought, I'm not sure if I can keep doing this. I'm not sure if I should keep doing this. And ultimately, I heard from my higher power that yes, I was supposed to keep doing this. This is my calling. This is my forever vocation. But if I had not stopped to ask, who's to say I wouldn't get down the road 5 years and wonder what all this was for? So that would be, I'm going to give you some of my tips and advice, but that is something that I just want to share, that I actually did go through that, and I would encourage you to contemplate this at some point in your career. The second emotional change was I released the outcomes. So I detached myself from the results, knowing that my spirit is in control of all of this and not me. I really needed this reminder around setting intentions and goals and things that I can control, and that I can't control other people's behaviors and actions. All I can control are mine. What was happening was I was getting too attached to the results. And when we are in social enterprise, we don't do this for the money. Obviously, we want to be profitable, but we do it because we're called by a higher power. And once we, as entrepreneurs, because we have this entrepreneurial bent, we want to succeed, we want to achieve. And it's so easy to get attached to our goals and attached to the results and identify with those. And by intentionally releasing the outcome and detaching from the results, I cannot tell you how much it freed me up. And it just gave me a new energy and kind of feeling like a new life force, where I wasn't being weighed down by these goals. And I would say the same is true for you. You can control how you show up each day. You can control the quality of what you put into your programs, but you cannot control whether your beneficiaries or employees attend or whether they show up or whether they do their work. You can put processes in place, but when it comes to actually doing the thing, there is a point where you stop and they start. So the result is on them, not on you, of whether the things get done, the thing gets done. And I had this revelation about for me about my focus on my 14. So I've had 14 graduates. We've had 14 graduates from Avant-Garde Entrepreneur Academy. And I know we want to make an impact, but one of the things I asked myself was, we focus on sometimes large numbers and we want to impact a lot of people. But one of the things I thought of was, what if our impact is magnified on just a few versus spread out among the many? And especially once I have some rest, I'm certainly open and, uh, hoping to help more entrepreneurs build the social enterprise of their dreams that, impacts thousands and leaves them with something left of themselves at the end of the day. But I thought, what if there's something special? There is something special about that feeling of contentment, knowing that if I only helped these 14 in a massive way, then anyone else I help is a bonus. And perhaps the same is true for you. You may have 3 people who are your beneficiaries of your social enterprise, or maybe even one person who shows up each day, ready to learn, ready to work. And you are still having a significant impact, even if it's on one person or 3 people, because one of your beneficiaries is responsible, likely for at least 4 other people. And if you have 3 who show up, then that's 15 lives that you're positively impacting. And that's likely across 3 generations. So releasing the outcome and focusing on how you show up and asking yourself that valuable question about the impact. What if my impact is magnified on just a few versus the many? How great would that be? It's something that has really, really freed me up. So a little bit about my experience during my sabbatical. In the beginning, when it was time for me to shut down, the words literally stopped flowing. I found myself staring off into space. And I admit it was a little scary. Um, I had to remind myself, okay, this is not going to last forever. It reminded me of when I had COVID and I couldn't think. And I would look at my computer and stare. And the brain fog, I know a lot of us have had it, and we all have the different symptoms, but a lot of mine was brain fog. And I thought, oh my gosh, at that time I thought, what if my brain doesn't come back? Because this was early on and no one knew what was going to happen. We wouldn't know that many of us, thankfully, many of us have recovered. But it kind of felt like that, where I would stare off into space and I just couldn't think. I couldn't put the words together. I would try to muscle through and send emails and, reply to people. And it just, nothing was coming out. I even had a difficult time explaining to someone why I couldn't help them at this time because I couldn't even get the words out. Another thing that was I slept a lot. I slept way more than I ever had before. I didn't know it was possible to sleep that much. And then something else I did was I intentionally shifted days that were out of alignment. So because I was kind of in this free floating place, if there were things that I was doing and they didn't feel good, I just did something else. And I was very intentional about, kind of goes back to shifting the patterns, about shifting days for that I was out of alignment and days that didn't feel good. So for example, Monday mornings, I would tell myself they felt good, but they didn't really feel good to me. I had this routine of, I'd have my quiet time, then I'd go to a coffee shop, and then I'd go to the gym, and then I'd go home or to my little place and work and create. But I was so fatigued and my brain was just in a fog. And so by doing things differently and shifting wasn't working for me. Now I know that I don't go to the gym on Monday morning. I just go from my journal time into creating. and I use it for my planning day. And then usually by the afternoon, my brain kind of starts to wake up. And it's whenever I have some of my best creative time and get some of my most focused creative writing and content creating and presentations done. So that's just kind of one example. So my tips for taking a sabbatical as a social entrepreneur. I know that a lot of you, if you're listening, you might not really be ready to pause or slow down, let alone pause. But I'm hoping that what I've shared so far has kind of been a little bit of an encouragement that it is possible. So I'm going to give you some tips now, and hopefully, as you listen to these, it will seem more and more attainable. So I'm breaking this up into before and during. Before starting a sabbatical, know that this will be different for you than it would be for a professor, a researcher, an employee, or someone in a field or job where taking a sabbatical is really part of the job description. There are some companies that it's required that you take a sabbatical. And the reason is they want people to either cross train to take on your role, or they want to make sure that no shenanigans have been going on. And they have basically someone who's coming in to go behind the employee and double check their work. I think this happens kind of in finance and that kind of thing. In the tech space, it's very common for someone to be required to take off time so that someone else can cross train. So know that as a social entrepreneur, as a leader, as a business owner, taking a sabbatical is going to be very different for you than it is going to be for someone in a field where it's expected to take a sabbatical. Or, you might even not like the term sabbatical. You may just want to call it a pause or call it a slowdown. Number 2, what is the minimum you can do to keep things alive? This is the toughest one because it is in our nature to think that everything we do must continue. Not true. Not true. So one thing I tried to, kind of as an example, one thing I tried to keep doing was keep making connections on LinkedIn. Bad idea. I thought, well, this is one of the things that I can, continue to reach out to people and just connect with them, see if they'd like to take the quiz, because I knew that would be something. Well, if people take the quiz, the What's Your Social Entrepreneur Style quiz, then I can send, I have things set up. I can send free resources directly to their inbox. And I thought, well, this is a great thing for me to be able to do because it's really easy for me to do it. And I felt like it's really beneficial. Oh, it is really easy and it is beneficial, but not whenever your brain stops working. So I found that, I know on LinkedIn, we don't have to, it's not required that you reply right away, but I went through, I think there were a few people that it was 2 months that I had to apologize. I chose to apologize for the long delay and reply to them because I just got to the point where I couldn't think. So I encourage you to think of what is the minimum that you can do to keep your social enterprise alive and going and thriving, even while you slow down a bit. Number 3, who can you delegate to? So I did some delegating. There are things that I would normally have done that I delegated to B. So I encourage you to see what is it that you're doing that you really can delegate to someone else on your team. This also helps them grow. I'm a big fan of delegating, but it's also possible that someone on your team could use a break as well. So it turned out that Kayla was also going through a lot of transition during the summer. She was looking at a move, all kinds of different things, and she really needed the break as well. So it worked out perfect for all of us because B wanted to take on some of the new and different projects. She wanted some variety. Kayla needed a break, and I couldn't think. So everybody won in our situation. I know that even though your organization may be a lot bigger, this is just an example of the divine timing, how you pressing pause or you slowing down could be the thing that everyone else in your organization needs, either to step up and do new things, or to have a little bit of a break of their own to focus on other things in other parts of their lives. Tip number 4, set your start date and a loose end date. I talked about this a little earlier, where I knew what date I was going to start, and I had a loose idea of an end date. It turned out that my end date, it was perfect timing wise for me. But up until the week before I was going to end, I thought, oh gosh, I'm not ready to start yet. I'm not ready to start and to get, I'm not ready to get back engaged with people yet. So I say to set your start date and then also set a loose end date for your pause. Be open to your spirit and your internal guidance system, and to maybe making it a little longer or a little shorter. One thing I encourage you to do is you might try. So, for example, I'll talk more about this, but I had some requests right after I decided to stop, and one of them was, or to go on a pause, and one of them was to write the foreword for a book. One of my graduates, Helen from Nigeria, is writing a book, and she asked me to write the foreword for it, and that's a big deal. And I was super honored to do it, but I just knew no matter what I did, my brain, like, I even tried, and it just nothing was happening. I could barely even focus on the pages. So I had, told her that I know this is really important. I'm really honored to do it. Go ahead and send it to, and I didn't even say this right away. It was a few weeks in. I said, go ahead and send it to me. And that way, once I start feeling like myself, I can at least read the book. And then when my brain kicks in, I can start to write the foreword. I don't think I was articulate enough to say it like that, but that's what I was kind of thinking in my head. So Helen sent me the book, and I opened it a few times, but it wasn't until the date that I had set, the July 8th, that I was able to focus on reading it. So I would encourage you to set a loose end date, and don't be concerned if a few days before you feel like you're not ready. Wait until that day to see if you're ready, because it's probably divine timing in your spirit not wanting you to get ahead of yourself, and you need more time to settle before you get back into things. I will say also, pressing pause, being out of your routine, helps a lot as well. So as far as the start date, John and I were taking a trip. So I was going to be out of my routine anyway for a few weeks. So I would encourage you to kind of stack it onto a trip. If you're going on a trip to another place, or let's say you're going home to your village, some form of travel that you're doing where you're already going to have a break from the day to day, I would encourage you to add it on to that, because it's kind of a natural break in the patterns. I have tried in the past to pause, but it is really difficult when it takes a lot of intention and a lot of vigilance that I didn't have to really take a break when I was still in my day-to-day routine. So those are my tips for before you press pause, before you slow down, before you take a sabbatical, whatever you want to call it. So first of all, know that it's going to be different for you as a business owner versus someone in a career where it's expected. Number 2, what is the minimum you can do to keep things alive? Number 3, who can you delegate to? And number 4, set your start date and a loose end date. Here are my tips for your sabbatical, slow down, or pause during the time that you're in it. And I may accidentally repeat myself on some of these. I think I might have gotten a little ahead on myself on some of the things when I shared before. First of all, tip number 1, be okay saying yes, but in a little while. The first day of my sabbatical, the very first day, well, I'll call it, because it was just a slowdown at that point. First day, I got 4 requests. 4. And they are people that I really like a lot. And I I won't say I'm a people pleaser, but I am here to serve. And if one of you asks me for something, you can bet that I'm going to bend over backwards to make it happen for you. But I just knew there was something about this time where I had to honor myself and say yes, but it's going to be a few months. And I can tell you that when you respect yourself, people respect you. So people will respect you when you respect yourself. And everyone understood. Now, there might be situations, obviously, I'm dealing with fellow entrepreneurs. If one of your employees asks for something, it might be different. They might not have the same level of natural respect because they don't understand what you're dealing with. Whereas most entrepreneurs, they understand and they actually appreciate that I'm taking a break because it makes them feel like, oh, well, I can take a break. If Trisha's taking a break, then I can take a break. But when it comes to your staff and your team, if you respect yourself, they will respect you. And I have to say that my spirit helped me out a little bit because it really was as if my brain shut off. As I mentioned to you before, I tried to put some things together, but the words just weren't coming in any form. So that's tip number one, being okay with saying yes, but in a little while. Number two, put your devices in focus mode and out of reach. Oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how habitual it was for me to just pick up my phone and look at it. And I even would catch myself when I was journaling and I would have a pause and I'd pick up my phone and look at it. And I wasn't even looking at anything. I was just looking at my phone. So I know I've already talked on this about turning off all the notifications on your phone, being in focus mode or do not disturb mode as much as possible. But I will say it again, turn off the notifications on your phone all the time, because that's even when you're not on a break, because that's going to help your productivity when you are. But if you do take a break or a pause, put your devices in focus mode and put them out of reach. This is something too that you can also, you might need to check in with your team every now and then. But if you are going to do that, then set a time that you'll check in and leave your devices out of reach until that time. Then pick them up, do what you need to do, and then turn them back off again and put them back out of reach. Number three, appreciation, gratitude, thankfulness. If your brain shuts down like mine did, if you can at least write what you are grateful for, this will help keep your vibe up. So appreciation and gratitude are there on the same frequency as love. It's like 540 megahertz. It is, if we can feel these good feelings, it keeps us from kind of getting in a funk, which can happen. And I have even, I have my journal here if anybody's watching on YouTube, because I couldn't think. So I wrote, I am grateful for, I appreciate, I am thankful for. So it's all the way down. And then on the back as well. And this was because my brain wasn't functioning enough to write anything coherent. So I thought, well, I'll at least talk about what I'm grateful for. And so that is something that really keeps, especially if taking a break or a pause it's not natural at first, and you can start to feel down, or it can kind of lead to a down spiral as possible. But if you're focused on appreciation and gratefulness and thankfulness, these are things that raise our vibe. And this is where we want to be as much as possible. And then my final tip is gradually transition back in. So I was completely out of it in May and June. Some of that was from travel. Some of that was from John's surgery, because he's 8 weeks in, and it's still a very long and painful recovery. In July, I did some behind the scenes type stuff. So I fulfilled all the requests that people had. My brain kicked in. So I wasn't having any meetings. I didn't do any Zooms. I didn't do any recordings. I did fulfill all the requests, which mostly involved writing. And I started getting things lined up for the new season of the podcast, working on the website. So a lot of behind the scenes type things. So working my press page, getting ready for the book launch, which is a huge deal with, coming to fruition today. It's crazy to think where it was in, early mid-July. Now, here we are in August. Book launches today. I have 4 podcast recordings this month. I'm creating a new masterclass. It's for the International Youth Exchange that's happening in Nepal. There are going to be at least 50 participants from like 10 countries. So I'm creating workshop masterclass for them. I'm creating a workshop for Blood Bag in Bangladesh. They handle with blood transfusions and speaking to their volunteers. And so it's like everything's all systems go. And I can tell you that a month ago on July 8th, there's no way I could have even conceived of being on camera at all. And so I would say that the gradual transition in has been very good. If I had gone from not doing anything to recording a podcast, and I had a presentation, we had our Avant-Garde Entrepreneur live group call this morning, I would have not been, I couldn't have functioned going from nothing to all in. So I encourage whatever you do for it to be a gradual transition in. So even if you're taking, 3 weeks off or 2 weeks on a pause, whatever it is, let it be a gradual transition. Let it be kind of a natural slow down and then ramp back up. So those are my tips for during your sabbatical, slow down or pause. Number 1, be okay saying yes, but in a while. Number 2, put your devices in focus mode and out of reach. Number 3, write appreciation, gratitude, and thankfulness. Number 4, gradually transition back in. Now, what I'll do differently next time. Obviously, this is my first time doing this. I thought it was kind of a once in a lifetime thing. First of all, I know there will be a next time. That is a big step. I can't tell you, I feel like a new person having a break. I feel like I have wind in my sails and I feel refreshed. And I know that whatever I put out into the world is going to be so much better because my vibe is higher. I'm operating at a higher frequency. The fear and the fatigue are gone. And that means that once I put myself out there again and I'm doing things that are out of my zone of familiarity or my zone of comfort, it's not that big of a deal because my pendulum isn't like swinging all the way to the end. It's just I'm stretching myself a little bit and then I'm going back, stretching a little bit and going back. And I think the same will happen for you to get some rest and get some recharging and know that whatever you put out into the world is going to be so much better than if you had just kept going, doing the same things the same way and expecting a different result. The second thing I'll do differently next time is I will not keep LinkedIn outreach messages going. I will just, I continue. We had everything set up for posting on social, had all of that set up, but I won't reach out to people on LinkedIn unless they reach out to me. I'll reply to those, but I won't do that because I don't want to let people down and I don't want them waiting for 2 months thinking that they've gotten a message from a robot who doesn't exist. So I will do that differently next time. And then the third thing is I won't feel guilty telling people because I'm on a pause, asking people to wait because I'm on a pause, because I know the quality of what I give them will be so much better afterwards. I did feel terribly guilty, guys. When I got those 4 requests that one day, I was like, oh gosh, this is a sign that I'm not supposed to start. And then my spirit was like, oh, well, let me just show you it's not a sign. Damn, like nothing. I couldn't think of anything. No words were coming out. So, thankfully my spirit overrode me, but I felt terribly guilty. Oh my gosh. And now I won't feel guilty next time because I will know that, once I had that break and I got back in, I could hear so clearly from my spirit. The fog had lifted and I felt so great about the quality that I was able of myself that I was able to give to people. So those are the things I'll do differently next time. First of all, I know there will be a next time. Second, I will not keep LinkedIn outreach messages going. And third, I won't feel guilty telling people, asking people to wait, because I know that what I give them will be so much better after the break. So what's happening now? So it's August. I've had a few months of a pause. First of all, my fear and fatigue are gone. I know I said that already, but I want to mention that here. And it wasn't until, I think the biggest thing is, it wasn't until I experienced the absence of it that I realized how much it's been present for several years. It's something that kind of goes back to when I talked about making the choice to continue. Since I was 16, you guys know this, I've been setting goals since I was 16. And this was the first time in my life where I actually made a conscious decision to keep going with the initiatives, and to keep going with the academy, and with the book, and with the 501c now that we have set up. For the past 20 or however many 20, 30 years, I've basically been kind of on this path where one thing led to the next, one thing led to the next, and it's like, well, this is the next logical thing to do, this is the next logical thing. And it was really valuable for me to feel like I had some, it's not that I didn't feel like I had autonomy over my life before, but to really pause after all the years of just doing what seemed like the next logical thing. And this kind of comes around back to the fear and fatigue. When we live in these cycles, when you live in this adrenaline rush all the time, you don't even realize that you're living that way. And it wasn't until I had the absence of that that I could really realize, wait a minute, I actually have a choice here. And that's the wonderful thing. We all want choices. We don't necessarily want to exercise all of our choices, but we do want to have choices and options. And by slowing down and pressing pause and letting go, the fear and fatigue all went away. I was able to hear and see things much more clearly. The second thing is, I have much healthier boundaries around my phone and my computer. There have been times when I actually didn't know where my phone was. And I'm not talking about like your grandma not knowing where her phone is. I mean, it was like it was in my bag, or, it wasn't, I'm not one to like lose things, but it's like, oh, where did I leave my phone? It was because I didn't have it on me. And it was amazing. It was an incredible, incredible feeling. The next thing is, I have clarity around my priorities. Gosh, I know that you can relate to this. It just feels like all the stuff becomes a big blob. And by taking a pause, it was like all the extra stuff just kind of dissipated. It wasn't like a drastic, like I cut things off. It was almost as if it just dissolved, like whatever wasn't necessary just sort of went away. I'm not thinking about it. It's not there. It's not taking up attention units in my brain. And so now I'm focused on like 4 or 5 things, which some people who, maybe if there's someone who works for a company, they might say, well, how can you have 4 or 5 like priorities? But as a business owner, that normally you have like 12 to 20. We've talked about this before. So, I know that I have just a few priorities, and I have a lot more clarity on what those are. And I've been able to streamline processes. That's what I was doing during the month behind the scene, is streamlining things, making things more efficient in the areas where I know that I'm going to focus my attention. And finally, I have much more energy and focus because the blob is gone. It doesn't seem like that big blob of stuff. And all the things we do, it does take up energy and attention units in our brain. And without all that stuff, it has given me so much more energy and focus and clarity. My brain cells did start to fire in alignment, and I couldn't be more grateful for the pause, and for all of you, for my friends who indulged me and were patient and waited for me, because it's really been it's really been wonderful. And my friend Sam Vanderweel, she's someone that I really look up to a lot. She says, here's the pruning things so better things can grow. So basically, we prune things off so better things can grow. My friend, it's super important for us to live these lives and for us to be impactful for others. We must take care of ourselves. And I believe strongly that you can build a social enterprise that is impactful for them and personally sustainable for you. And doing less, not more, might actually be the answer to the questions that you've been asking yourself. And you catching this episode at this time might actually be a sign from your spirit gently nudging you that it's time, that your time for pressing pause is near. So if this is something that you're contemplating, whether it's sabbatical, a pause, or even just a slow down, and you have questions and you want to talk more about it, you know how to find me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way. I am there and I'm available to talk. Maybe go back and listen to this episode, and then we'll certainly turn it into a blog post so that you'll have things listed in a concise way as well. So always here for you, my friends, even if it might be yes, but in a little while. And I encourage that if you share that with the people in your life, they will understand and they will really value you whenever you are back and present and rested.